Hello, good morning. Recording is in progress. What would I do without the little Zoom lady? We're listening to Roberta Flack, Bobby Flack, as those who know her well. I don't have no idea if that's true or not. And we have a bunch of turkeys in the backyard, which will be playing a predominant role in the next experiment in writing episode. I know this may come as a shock to some of you. If it does, you're not paying attention. I often go back to school, and this may not mean that I actually go and attend the university. It may mean that I sit in on a lecture or just really open up a bunch of similar things on YouTube, which is nice and adequate, but frankly, in my case, it's easier for me to go, I know about that person, let me just go meet them, go sit in on a class of theirs. In this case, I've been saying to myself for a while, excuse me, that I needed to go back to school to improve my writing, my technique, my story crafting. And thank goodness a lot of my readers, all of my readers so far have said, what, really? No. Oh, yes, I do. I recognize weaknesses. And the problem for me is sometimes I know there's a weakness, but I can't identify it, which leads to this experiment. I was, or I am, working on Psychotricks. I'll include a link because I've posted about it before in my blog. And it is, I believe it's a really interesting story. The first readers have said it's a really interesting story. And the comments back have indicated to me that there's a problem with it. The comments back have never shown or indicated what the problem is, only where the problem is. That's a valuable thing. I mentioned that in previous exercises or experiments in writing. It's not necessarily the best thing to know what the problem is, because if it's not something you're aware of, you're getting people's opinions. And if all the opinions are the same, it is about this, pay attention. But if the opinions are all kind of different, but where they say the problem is all the same, there's a problem there, and you need to investigate. So that's been one thing driving me back to doing more studying. I actually, just as an aside, I list a lot of the books I've read, which I found invaluable on my blog. I'll include links to that as well. So what I have realized in Psychotricks is the end, the actual close of the story is weak. Everything up to that point is pretty darn good. But the close is kind of, I want the reader to go, put that into a story. Joseph grunted like he was I'm sorry. So I want the reader to really be pulled through to the very part where it says end. And I noticed in my reading of it, the last 2 or 3 pages were, they were good, they were adequate, they closed the story, but they didn't give a payoff. What I realized from studying was I had the antagonist wrong. For those of you who are familiar with the story, Psychotrix is about a grad student, brilliant mathematician, who has developed a mathematical model of reality. That's really not that bizarre if you studied really intense cosmogony, cosmology, quantum. That's all about the shape of reality. How does reality occur? He pushes it a little bit further, from particles and energies and fields to actual demonstrations, trees and people and creatures. It's had a traumatic past. I know you're shocked that I would write about people with traumatic past. And he develops this model, this mathematical tools, and realizes that they can reshape reality, not just on paper, but in reality. In this world, they can reshape this world. He is emotionally and psychologically haunted by what has happened to him, and he's in a very unhealthy relationship. I had the primary antagonist of the story as a creature which could be real, maybe an element of his mathematical modeling. We don't really know, but he has to combat it. It is an increasing threat in the story. Until the climax, he battles it and overcomes it. And that was good. I really did a good job of that, he said. And so said a lot of readers. But it left the actual end of the story weak. And I realized the real antagonist, literally this past night, the antagonist of the story is not the creature. It's the bad relationship, because the bad relationship is the echo of everything that's happened to him in his life. It is a demonstration of his immaturity, of his vulnerability, of his lack of taking responsibility for himself now. So the creature is a manifestation, if you will. It is the agent of the true antagonist, which is the bad girlfriend, if you will. Now, the bad girlfriend, she's vain. She has a lot of negative qualities. However, she does not do anything directly to the main character, the protagonist, that would cause you to say she's a real threat. She's more like a gnat, more like a nuisance, more like, why are you seeing her? But she does provide the focus that allows him to go through the final transformation, which allows him to confront the creature and defeat it. Specifically, she does something, I won't give it away. She does something in the story not to the protagonist, but to someone the protagonist values incredibly. And that is the trigger to the final, if you will, conflict. So, excuse me, if you are writing something and you have a weak ending, and if you're just writing something and it's not just coming out the way you want, take a look at the protagonist and the antagonist. The antagonist has to somehow challenge. It may not be an open challenge, but they have to challenge the protagonist. They have to be what drives the protagonist to change. Okay? And in Psychotrix, it's not the creature which drives Paul, the protagonist, to change. It's the relationship. And again, the antagonist may never directly interact with the protagonist. In Empty Sky, the primary antagonist of the story, Earl Pangiosi, never directly interacts with the protagonist, Jamie, until, I don't know, the last 25, 30 pages of the story. They're kind of weaving in and out from each other, but they're never directly in the same room, if you will, never in the same scene. But he is, Earl, the antagonist, is always there doing things without realizing who Jamie is or what Jamie is to thwart Jamie succeeding. In The Augmented Man, it is again the horrible past and what was done to the main character, Nick Traylor, the protagonist, that causes him to want to go through the change. He has a love interest in the story, and in a way, you could say that that love interest is the antagonist because it is her love for him that drives him to change. She's not an antagonist in the way you might think, but in the concept of story arcs, storylines, she's an antagonist because she causes him to realize it's a final thing, I can't be this way, and causes him to decide, I must change. If I am to survive, if I am to continue, I must change. In The Inheritors, the living situation is not the antagonist. The relationships are not the antagonist. It is the place he dreamt of as being wonderful and great, which is not. That's the antagonist. There are a bunch of individuals there who are antagonistic, but not antagonistic in the sense of I'm going to do you harm. They're antagonistic in the sense of their indifference, of their wanting to use the main character, Tommy, basically as their tool. I did not realize it at the time, but I wrote a book about venture capitalists and investors, he said from his business background. So, getting back to it, if the story's not moving the way you want it to or the way it should, and if the ending is weak, take a look at the protagonist and antagonist interaction. Again, they may never encounter each other, but they will be thwarting each other's efforts continuously. Make sure the antagonist is the correct one. Make sure the protagonist is the correct one. Make sure that their conflict, even if it's not direct, is what drives the final act that causes the protagonist to undergo the change, which ends the story. Thank you. Yeah, look for that button, Joseph. Oh my gosh, I get it. There it is. Bye-bye.